I'm genuinely mad. Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video, I'm going to be doing Star Wars Canon Project Episode 7. Alright, so before I get to anything bookish, make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, have you read any Star Wars novels? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Let's talk about them in the comments. I have been doing this Star Wars Canon project for going on a year and a half now, which is such a weird thought. But if you're somehow unaware of it, I will put a link to my playlist up above where you can start a little bit earlier on, because now I've been doing this for a while. I'm pretty far in. In fact, at this point, I'm right around this section of Clone Wars, the TV show. So that's been a lot of fun to get some expansion on this time period. As per usual, I'm planning to read 4 books for this episode. So starting at the top with Queen's Hope by E.K. Johnston. This is the final book in the Padme trilogy, in which we are once again, shockingly, following Padme. At this point, she is now in a secret marriage with Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi. And if that wasn't enough to test them, then being consistently forced apart because of a war, yeah, that's gonna be a little rough on any relationship. While Anakin is on the front lines, Padme actually ends up getting her own mission, but she can't let anybody in the Senate know that she's gone. So she ends up calling upon Sabe, her best friend, and also, handmaiden that would occasionally take her place, to once again swap. However, it's been a long time since they've done this, and some things have clearly changed. Honestly, Sabe and Padme's relationship has been the most interesting aspect of this series overall for me, so I am intrigued to see a little bit more of that here, and at the very least, I will be finishing out a series. Next one I'd been looking forward to for so freaking long, just from looking at the cover and hearing the title, Brotherhood by Mike Chen. Also set during the Clone Wars, there has been a threat to the trade of the Federation, and Obi has been sent by the Jedi to try and smooth things over, improve relationships, but Anakin's not the best at listening, even though Obi continues to tell him that he is going to travel alone. Anakin, of course, cannot help himself and must insert into the situation, unfortunately, along with a Jedi youngling. But also the change in their relationship, what with Anakin officially being in the same level as Obi, is causing a little bit of tension. Oh, and also Asajj Ventress is working with the Separatists on this planet as well to try and convince them that actually they should be joining the Separatists instead of the Republic. I love Ventress, so yeah, naturally, I was very excited for more of her also. Another villain character that gets a lot of love that I was also very excited to see more of is Thrawn, starting with the Thrawn Ascendency series, Chaos Rising by Timothy Zahn. And this one I'm so excited for because first off, it is literally written by the person who created this character. And second, we're actually getting a peek into more of this character's background, something that, like, I know there's a different Thrawn series that's also been written by this author, but this one's obviously earlier on in the timeline. So I imagine we're gonna see a little bit more of Thrawn's upbringing and how his training went to create this scary mastermind that we end up meeting in Rebels. And I'm especially intrigued to see him being put on a case after there is an attack on the 𝗖cie capital where there's no real trace of who caused it. And Thrawn, being the brilliant man he is the one who is determined to figure out what is going on and save his planet and his people. Returning to Ventress with this final one, which is Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. This is actually a new author to me in the Star Wars universe, so this will be interesting. Not only because of that, but also because it looks like we're actually going to be pairing a Jedi and a Sith member to work together. It looks like at this point Ventress is no longer working for Dooku, and in fact kind of get ropes into working with the Jedi to bring Dooku down. But of course, I've seen in the past with prior novels why Ventress has such a distrust of the Jedi and why she has this very complicated relationship with the Force. So this is going to be so interesting. I'm really excited to see the expansion around her character even more. But along with that, I'm also very intrigued by this Jedi Quinlan Voss, who is described as quite brash. I don't know who this character is. I can't place a face, but I don't know why. His name is really familiar, so it must have been mentioned somewhere. It's just floating around in the back of my head. I can't wait for this though, because again, Ventress, I am so here for more Ventress content. And on that note, I will officially talk to y'all again when I have started into Queen's Hope. Hey guys, so I have officially finished Queen's Hope by E.K. Johnston. Once again, not updating you at the halfway point because I felt nothing at the halfway point. And now that I finished this book, I'm not gonna lie, this entire series feels like it was such wasted potential. Not one of these Padme books did I feel like Padme was truly the main character, was truly the driving force of the story. There was just so much opportunity here to really dive into her character, who she is, like her background, what made her the woman she is, how she came to be in this place. Explore the relationships she has with some of these characters that we really haven't gotten to see. Across the board, it felt like the most interesting elements were always glossed over. I guess, yes, it expanded on the politics that were going on at this time in the Star Wars universe, but those weren't even that interesting. Like I said, this book could have expanded upon Padme and Anakin's relationship because as of this point, they're married. But like we don't see the proposal, we barely see the wedding. It is sped through so quickly, and it's through Anakin's perspective, which seemed so strange given the fact that Padme is like the titular character. Literally time skip over their honeymoon where we could actually, get to see them spending time with each other and like what is this relationship really based on? But we're just told things. We don't actually get to see any of it. Just so frustrating. The next most interesting thing about this series and this book in particular is Padme's relationship with Sabe. These two have to be so close due to the situation they're in. I mean, they have to be interchangeable. They need to know everything about each other. They need to be able to literally seem like they're clones of one another. I feel like there's aspects of their relationship that get scratched at where we kind of see the ramifications of that on Sabe and their relationship on the whole. Not enough to really make it satisfying. Not enough to really showcase to me like the full breadth of their relationship. There was a reveal in, I think it was the first book. It gets glossed over there. Once again, is slightly acknowledged here. Did not get nearly as much time as I wanted. I think maybe there was like one chapter where we got to see them diving into this. There was one fun interaction between Sabe and Anakin, but even that, I feel like it didn't get played up as much as it probably could have to give us a little bit more tension, a little bit more drama. I'm honestly not sure if my issues with this series overall is the fault of the author or if it's like Disney / Lucasfilms, if they were really the ones controlling the story and Johnston was required to like stay within these limits. I literally feel like I could have just not read this series and I'd be fine. Such a freaking bummer. I mean, I've had a few Star Wars books here and there throughout this project so far that have been misses, but like this one was such a letdown. This was 2 stars. I'm genuinely mad. Hello, my friends. So I've hit the halfway point into Brotherhood, and I'm really liking this, especially in comparison to Queen's Hope. But I will say it's kind of funny, like when comparing the two. I actually feel like we have seen more and better of Padme and Anakin's relationship in this book than we did in Queen's Hope, where Padme is the focus, and that's a YA novel. So like I feel like the romance would have been a little bit better written than it is here. But no, I actually feel like Chen has included the relationship between those two and presented it in a way that's much better. Like it feels more authentic, especially given their circumstances, because right now they're married, but obviously like it is still a big secret to everyone. And then I really like seeing Obi kind of trying to figure this out, wondering what's going on. That's been pretty fun too. I'm also really surprised by the fact that given the title, given the cover, these two aren't together. At least as of right now at the halfway point, they're not together. They're not even on the same planet. Kenobi is kind of working on the council at this point, but like not full time, so he's sort of a master. And even though they're not actually together, I do still feel like we're getting good bits around their relationship. The way they think about each other and their relationship impacts other aspects of their lives feels very realistic, feels very well showcased. Really, really enjoying that. I also like seeing some of their interactions with other characters. Anakin and Mace, that's a lot of fun. Of course, Obi and Ventress, so good. But we do also see from a few other perspectives. We see from Ventress. We see from this woman who is a separatist. I'm not going to be able to remember her name off the top of my head. I just know it. Rug. That's right. And then we also see from a Padawan, Mill. As far as I'm aware, Ahsoka was Anakin's only ever Padawan, but he's establishing a bit of one, being her teacher and being in charge of her, but also connecting with her and helping her with her relationship to the Force. I've really, really been enjoying that. And also through that relationship, we've been able to explore a little bit more around Anakin's background, around the events that took place in Attack of the Clones. So right now, I am applauding Chen when it comes to his character work. It feels so well done. I'm not super sold on the plot so far. It feels like we have had a lot of build up to this point and not a bunch of exciting things have really been happening. However, there was some events that happened just shy of the halfway point that have me really excited, that have me desperate to pick this back up, that have me thinking possibly Anakin and Kenobi will now be actually working together. And I'm excited for that. I do feel like so far Chen has done a fairly good job of staying true to the voices for these characters that have already been created. For Kenobi, for Anakin, for Ventress. Ventress is probably the one that I'm most questioning of, but that's because really, I'm gonna say a lot of how I'm viewing her characterization now is thanks to Dooku from what we got to explore there with that book. And so I don't think Chen is quite matching the voice that Scott gave her, but still pretty good, still pretty close. I'm really, really liking this. Thank God, y'all, this is going so much better. This has been a very up and down section of my Canon project thus far. I am so glad to be done with those Padme books, and I'm very, very hopeful that the next like little series within this project, which is the Thrawn Ascendency series, will go much better. Hey y'all, so I have officially finished out Brotherhood, and I think Chen definitely matched the voice for Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ventress. I also think he did a really good job of kind of building on the lore we already have for each of these characters, but building up the dynamic we've seen between them and expanding upon those dynamics as well. The character work in this book was so freaking good and a very, very good representation of what I love about reading the Star Wars novels. Like I talked about in my first update, what with the title and the cover, I did think that these two characters were going to be together a little bit more. Not a problem. They definitely were more so in the second half of the book. But like I also mentioned in my first half update, I think Chen still did a phenomenal job of showcasing the impact that a relationship between these two has had on each of them. The bond that's forged over the years and the changes to how they think, how they act because of the influence the other person has had on them. I also think it was fantastic that so much of this book feels like it's laying the groundwork for events that are going to take place in the future that I already know about, because obviously I've already seen the films, I've seen the TV shows, so I could pick out little moments here and there where it felt like Chen was referencing something that I know is going to happen next, that I know is going to happen in the future, whether it's between these two characters or like Padme and Anakin, Obi and Satine, also Anakin and future Padawans. I really enjoyed that. It kind of felt like, I don't know if saying call back is the appropriate term, because like it's referencing stuff that'll happen in the future, so like a call forward. I also feel like Chen did a fantastic job of referencing numerous prequel memes, particularly around Anakin, and so I really, really appreciated that. It had me dying every time I picked up on one of them. When I finished Queen's Hope, I didn't want to touch another Star Wars novel, but I'm so glad I didn't let that affect my reading plans, and I just went ahead and jumped into Brotherhood, because this reinvigorated my enjoyment of this universe and my love for these characters. Where this one ended, I immediately want to go pick up the next book, but I am going to take a little bit of time because now it's time for Clone Wars. And so I am going to start a rewatch of that, and I can't wait. Yeah, this was leagues better than the last book. So this came out to 4.5 stars. Not at all surprised. I knew I was going to love it just from looking at the cover. Hey y'all, so I have hit the halfway point into Thrawn, well technically, Chaos Rising. It keeps throwing me off the title of this book, so because it looks like Thrawn Ascendency would be the title, but no, technically the title is Chaos Rising. This is the first book in the Thrawn Ascendency series. And okay, so going into this, learning more about Thrawn, I am all over that. I really like how zahn, however you pronounce this author's name, is presenting the character, because he's doing it in this very interesting way where you aren't actually seeing through Thrawn's perspective. You are seeing through everyone around him's perspective. Even with that, you were able to learn more about Thrawn's character, and I think like the writing chops in order to do that and actually have his characterization come across and improve and develop throughout the story is really good. Like that's so impressive. He's brilliant, he's tactful, beautiful. He's almost kind of like an alien Sherlock. Oh, like that's kind of the energy I'm getting from him here. But he's not quite as dark or terrifying, really, as the character that I met in Rebels, which is interesting because it's like, you know, what happens between now when we're first meeting him and then? Like what's going to take place in these events to change this character into that scary mastermind? We alternate timelines in this one where we have memories and then the present timeline. And it's interesting because both of those perspectives, I guess, are both exploring Thrawn's character and seeing how he's grown into this man. But with that, because this is so focused on Thrawn's character with this sort of a setup, I do feel like the characters we're actually seeing through, they just aren't getting really as much attention as I would like. They're not getting built out in comparison to Thrawn. Isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is kind of wonky when it comes to like keeping me invested in the story, because we're seeing so much of this book through some of these people's perspectives, and yet I don't feel very tied or intrigued by these characters. I'm still focused on Thrawn. And that is kind of a shame because there's been enough there with some of them that I'm thirsty for more. By this point, I'm kind of realizing I don't know if we're really going to get more. What I'm not really loving in this so far is the plot. The way this is breaking down between the two timelines. In the prior one, we're focusing on Thrawn as he is rising the ranks in the military. And then in the current timeline, we're following him where is he a captain? I don't remember. He's first in command. Okay. And he's uncovering this plot of what appears to be basically colonization of surrounding planets that the ascendency, his bosses, don't really think is happening. And he is concerned that they are going to come after his planet next. Both of the storylines are interesting enough that I am, continuing to read. It's keeping me invested just enough. But I think between alternating in these two different timelines, which have two separate plots, and then each of those timelines seeing through multiple different characters' perspectives, again, never through Thrawn's own perspective, and each of these characters have a different amount of knowledge about the events that are unfolding, it's making it difficult for me to really get invested into either of the storylines, which is a shame. From what I knew about this book when I started it, I would expect that the past timeline where Thrawn is rising in the ranks of the military would be more of the focus. And part of me does wish that was what was happening here, because then we really could dedicate a lot of the story to purely his character and building him out, increasing our understanding and knowledge of him. In reality, I'm actually much more intrigued by the storyline in the present timeline because of some of the perspectives we've seen through. Like I said, there's like just enough there for me to want more, but I just don't know if that's really going to happen. So it's kind of a complicated conundrum. As far as the world building goes, also, I mean, the 𝗖cie society, we don't really know much about them other than the fact that they're like on the very outer rim, and they are pretty untouched by most other like Star Wars species and worlds that we do know about. And Zahn doesn't really ease you into it. He does just throw you in and you have to figure out how to swim, which took me a while, I'm not gonna lie. But now I do feel a little bit more comfortable, and there is still enough unknown that I am desperate to keep reading to figure out more about their society. I do still have some outstanding big questions, but I mean, this is only book one. I think 6 dedicated novels that Thrawn has now, so hopefully by the end of all of them, my questions around their society will have been answered. The ascendency is also very politics-based, which, I'm not gonna lie, could get pretty boring for me. But surprisingly, that hasn't actually happened, just because of Thrawn's complicated place in this ascendency with his family. He has such an interesting ability to win people over, but also alienate them so much because of how brilliant he is and the little things he picks up on, which again, tying back to Thrawn's perspective, is showcased in this really great way, and it's very impressive how we are able to see that through these other characters and understand the dynamics Thrawn creates with each of them. But it is also making me long for Thrawn's perspective, because I want to see how he is experiencing these situations, what his thoughts are on some of the events unfolding here. But because of the way the story is set up, we're always at arm's distance from him, and I have complicated feelings about that. Like, part of me thinks the author did that very purposefully to kind of continue to allow this character to have this mystique about him, but he's literally the titular character. Like, I want the entirety of the focus to be on him. So yeah, I'm having complicated feelings about this book. I am liking it overall though. Like I said, it is keeping me intrigued enough. Like, everything in the book I'm not loving, but there's so much there that is interesting that I can't help myself. I have to keep returning to it. I want to keep reading. I'm very intrigued to see how are things going to wrap up though in a way that is satisfying to me, or is it just going to be more of this same feeling? And I don't know if I want that. So we'll see how this goes. Hey guys, so I was editing this video and apparently I didn't film an ending update for Thrawn. I don't know what happened there. I did enjoy this, but I feel like when I finished the book, I still had so many unanswered questions, not just when it came to Thrawn as a character, but also like his species, where the plot is going to be going next. This was such a weird book in that it very much feels like the start of a series. It seems like it doesn't quite do what you expect in the first book in a series. As far as the two plot lines we follow go, both of those get wrapped up in a way that makes sense and I felt like was satisfying. And then I also felt like by the time I finished this book, I did know a lot more about Thrawn as a character. Even though I think how this book was written is very impressive, I honestly do wish we had Thrawn's perspective. Like, I wouldn't mind if we alternated perspectives with other characters, but the fact that we don't get anything through Thrawn's eyes at all, it's a shame to me, honestly. I think Zahn has some serious writing chops in order to give us so much about this character when we don't see through his perspective. But again, there's just certain moments in the novel where I want to know what he was thinking. I want to see what his perspective on this situation is. I want to hear how he is putting all this stuff together in his brain. Like, how is he figuring everything out to work out, formulate this plan, and then enact said plan when clearly, of course, every time something's going to go wrong because that's what happens. So I finished this book and I had very conflicting feelings because there's a lot of this book that I really enjoyed, and there's a lot of it that I think showcases how talented of a writer Zahn is, but there's other aspects of it I didn't feel satisfied with what was there. And that is such a shame because he tempted me. He did. I was so invested. And I guess it's also just the matter, like I said, this is the first in a series. He definitely has me thirsty for more. I would be continuing it one way or another because of this project, but like, I'm going to keep reading in the series to find out what happens. But like, I really hope we do actually get Thrawn's perspective at some point. When it came to rating this based on Cawpile, this was a really wonky one. It came out to roughly about a 3.75 stars. For my graphic, I will go ahead and say a 4-star and just round it up. Yeah, like I said, this was a really weird book. Like, when I finished it, I just had such conflicting feelings. Hey y'all, so I have hit the halfway point into Dark Disciple. And I'm liking this. Let me first start out with that. I am liking this book. I like Vaz, I like Ventress, I like the setup of the situation that gets them to work together because they are going after Count Dooku. There's like certain elements of the story that I just think are silly or like really convenient. So starting at the top, when Voss seeks out Ventress to try and work with her, he is told by the council not to let her know he is a Jedi. That element doesn't really matter. Like, she figures it out almost immediately. He comes clean to her pretty quickly. So much so to the point that I'm like, what was the point of us saying he should keep this a secret? Because like, the council doesn't even really give a very solid reason as to why they think he should keep this a secret. Because obviously, I mean, the council has voted for Vaz to try and assassinate Dooku. Along with that, there is a developing romance between these two characters, which I did not know going into it. And honestly, I probably should be all over it, but it's happening so fast that it feels really inauthentic and really rushed and just doesn't really make sense for the character of Ventress that has been built out, in my opinion, very easily opening her heart to this guy who has been her mortal enemy for such a long time, and to on like such a basic level of their personalities is such an opposite to her. It doesn't make sense. It is a shame because there are really good moments between them where we see their relationship shifting. We feel the change that's going on between them as they form this camaraderie, as they form this slight friendship. But it feels like the romance comes out of freaking nowhere. And even since that romance has happened, we're still having some of these small moments to showcase how their relationship is improving. You should have had this like grand moment of them becoming a couple and put it at the end of the book if you were going to do this. The 3/4 mark at the very least. Putting it 30% in makes no sense. It's just way too sudden. And then along with that, this part might possibly be pushing into spoilers, so I guess I'll give a forewarning for that if you want to read this. Ventress convinces Vaz that in order to defeat Dooku, he needs to embrace the dark side. He needs to be open to that darkness so that he can actually get this job done. That's cool. I can understand why she's saying that, especially given who she is and like how she's been trained. I actually can be really into this. I would love to see Vaz struggling to put himself in this mindset, struggling against how he was raised, how he has spent majority of his life with certain ideologies and having to learn to push against them and ignore them. He's always pushed the envelope a little bit, but from what we've seen of other characters, he's never been a Jedi that they've been worried about turning. So I thought that would have been a great way to expand on Vaz's character, to really delve into him and watch this very interesting shift in a character that we haven't really seen before. I think that would have been so fun, but it happens so fast. Again, like the things that I think would be really interesting about this book are just happening way too quickly. Particularly, there's this one scene where Vaz officially makes a change, like officially pushes further than he ever has before. The whole setup of the scene, I don't particularly agree with. First off, I think like the author just didn't make this situation make sense. But second, again, it feels like Ventress is trying to manipulate Vaz into doing this. And we do see Vaz struggle against it. But once again, it feels like he compromises his beliefs so fast. And I guess I'm just not convinced by what the author is showcasing here across the board. Is kind of my ongoing problem, which is such a shame because aspects of the book I do really like. I like these characters on their own. I like aspects of seeing them interact. And going into this book, I did know, I think this was supposed to be like either originally a story for Clone Wars, but it got cut out of the TV show. And portions of the book do very much feel like Clone Wars episodes. And maybe that's part of the reason why some of this stuff is getting rushed so much, because if it was a Clone Wars episode, you know, they're having to like squeeze this stuff in to like 20 minutes. But like in a long form novel, doesn't really make sense. Might have needed more editing. Not going as great as I was hoping it would be, honestly. But I'm still semi-enjoying it. Like I'm into it enough to keep reading. It's not like I would DNF it. Hey guys, so I officially finished out Dark Disciple. And I liked this book. I did. But I feel like with what was presented here, with what I was promised and what I went into this book expecting, I could have loved it. But Golden didn't quite give me that. As I said in my prior update, I really enjoy Ventress and Vaz as characters separately. I liked seeing a dynamic between them. I liked seeing this evolving relationship. I just felt like it was done in a way that was too fast and just doesn't really make sense for the characters that have been established to us. I did really enjoy getting to learn more about each of these characters, getting to see more of their backgrounds, Ventress's in particular, because the Dathomir witches are so fascinating. And so I really enjoyed seeing more of Dathomir, learning more about their culture, and also just like Ventress's background and her experiences with them in general. Ate all of that up. It was so good. Vaz, on the other side, I also really enjoyed. I liked learning about his background as well. He kind of reminds me of like Elzar Mann from the High Republic section. And I did feel like his side of the romance was more convincing. I believed he had feelings for Ventress. I don't know if I was quite there to believe that Ventress, this character that we've seen, is very like cold, calculated, has removed her emotions so much from herself. I don't know if I could quite say I was sold that she was in love with Vaz, which makes certain things that happen in the plot later on in the story harder to believe because I wasn't convinced by her feelings for him. Back to Vaz though, I wasn't super convinced by how he was, I guess I'll say manipulated into utilizing the dark side, and how the story unfolds in the latter half of the book. It's one of those where it makes for a fun and exciting plot, but under further scrutiny, I just don't know if it really holds up. I don't know if I really believe that. And that was kind of my same issue with the plot itself on the whole. The idea of it is very fun, but when you think about it in the grand scheme of this universe and like with these characters who have made these decisions, I don't know if I really believe it. And then with that, how the novel closes out, it goes back to, you know, the very quintessential discussion in this universe of good versus evil, and like the philosophical debate of like what makes somebody a good person and what makes somebody a bad person. But the way it's presented here feels so after school special. And it does remind me once again that like this was supposed to be a Clone Wars arc, and that makes sense if, you know, it's for a TV show that's technically speaking geared towards kids. That makes sense. But this is an adult novel. I think they needed to amp things up there a little bit. They needed to shift how it was being presented, how it was being talked about, especially seeing as how I've seen the films numerous times, and I know the events that are going to happen next. Like how this book closes out to like where that movie starts, it's just like it seems like everything that happened here is inconsequential for what's going to happen next. So like what was the point of having this discussion anyway? I did enjoy though getting to see how Ventress's arc closes out, because in the Clone Wars like we don't really get an official answer for her. I know the closeout of her story has been written numerous times, but this one is constituted the current canon one, and so I liked getting to see that. Pulling away from the critiques, there were a lot of fun moments in this book. I mean, there's a lot of nods and nudges to Clone Wars, makes sense, to some of the interesting dynamics certain characters have on the sides, and also references to things that have ended up becoming just straight memes, so I thought that was hilarious too. In the end, I gave this about 3.5 stars. Like I said, I liked it, but there was an opportunity for me to have really loved this book, and I don't think Golden really pulled it out for that, unfortunately. But I mean, it was still an interesting and fun read. And so on that note, that is it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for going to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave me a sun emoji in the comments. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!